friends, it's Brittany at Ink and Papyrus and welcome back to my channel. In a recent video, I took plain blank napkins that I only paid a couple of dollars for, and I went ahead and printed my own really pretty napkins to use for decoupage. This project all started after I discovered it was like $2 per napkin for a pretty one. I said enough of that. I'm going to print some of my own napkins to decoupage with. So if you would like to see a video specifically on actually running them through the printer and printing on these, I will link that above and in the description box below. Today, we are going to be using some of those gorgeous napkins to decoupage, and I will be showing you some of my favorite decoupage type projects. But first, I have to show you some of the really pretty napkins that I printed. This really inspired me to go work on some decoupage projects because I was thrilled with how they came out. These are just regular digital images, some different collage printables that I tried to scale as best as possible and printed on the napkin. And like I said before, I'm thrilled with how these came out. So one of my favorite napkins that I printed was this like botanical kind of French themed napkin. It's just a plain white napkin with some black ink over top, and I love how it came out. And I decided that I wanted to make a kind of vintage gold botanical sort of journal cover. I'm going to skip through a lot of, I'm just going to give you little hints and pieces of the actual journal cover making process. I don't want to bog you guys down, and I know you guys pretty much all of you probably know how to make a journal cover by now, but it did end up being a really special cover, and so I do want to show you some of the little bling that I assembled on the journal and how little pieces of how I put it together, and then we will finally get to the decoupage part. With regard to the cover, I took this really pretty gold vintage paper, and as you see here, I am just sewing it to light cardstock. I clip my paper to the cardstock because I realized that previously when I would glue with a glue stick, glue the paper to the cardstock, it always seemed to gum up my machine. And so I find that if I clip it, and as long as I kind of hold it in place well, sewing it directly just works better. Plus that way you don't get any bubbles or anything like that. So that has been a change for me, and my sewing machine did just recently die, my last one, and I feel like I did kind of put it through a lot of abuse. So I've been trying to go easy on my new one. For the inside cover, I found these gorgeous green and brown pages, and I decided that I would just simply make the inside cover layered pockets. And I am going to, later you'll see me just rip the top of each of the pages with a tearing ruler. I think it just gives it texture and it makes it look like you're supposed to do something with it. It's clearly like, oh, this is a pocket, or, and I think it just looks really cool. So that's going to be the inside cover on the front and the back. And speaking of sewing machines, while I'm just doing a little monotonous minutia, I have to tell you this will probably entertain some of you guys. As you know, I do try and incorporate sewing into my journals, though I am no expert with the sewing machine by any stretch, and in fact, I've had some real disasters on my hands. My last sewing machine lasted, maybe 3-4 years, and then I think something happened with the timing, and basically it was going to cost more money to fix than it would to buy a new machine, sadly enough. So I just bought this Brother sewing machine, and it seemed like I was having problems already. And people tell you, okay, rethread the machine. I did that top and bottom a couple of times. I reread the instructions and like, am I missing something here? I tried changing the tension, and it seemed like it was like skipping stitches, or it was like seizing up almost every third stitch, and then it would shred the thread, and I was like, oh my god, I'm like too. I just at my wit's end. I changed the needle several times because I found that, bad things happen. I know that's not the technical term, but bad things can happen for sure if the needle is bent. And sometimes the needle can be bent and not, um, it can still kind of look straight to your eye, when you eyeball it. So just change the needle when in doubt. So I did all that. I thought maybe the needle was hitting like the presser foot, so I tried adjusting that. I swear I took this damn thing apart kind of almost like twice. And guys, I realized, would you believe, how the sewing machine needle, the flat part is supposed to be facing the back? I had put it in wrong like twice. I had the flat part facing the front, something that simple. And since I fixed that, I have not had any problems, knock on wood. So if you think you've tried everything and you're just stuck, just try changing everything out, look everything over again, rethread your machine, and 9 times out of 10, it will work. And for everything else, there's either Reddit, YouTube, or call your local sewing machine fixer upper place, and maybe they can help you. Okay, enough of my adventures with my sewing machine. So now you're seeing the front and the back. I have the preliminary like structure of the journal completed. I have some um, ribbon surrounding the spine. It's going to be an exposed spine, but some ribbon surrounding the spine. I have my pockets in place on the inside cover, and then you'll see on the back I have just sewn some vellum to some cardstock to create another pocket. Maybe I'll put some dried flowers in there, something really cool like that. So now I am deciding exactly what to decoupage on my cover, and you'll see that I am backing the decoupage napkin with some cardstock, and on the front I put down some book page. This is not really the kind of paper that I think you'd want to decoupage directly onto. Um, I've noticed that decoupage always seems to look better when you decoupage onto a lighter surface. Um, that's just kind of been my personal experience. And also, I like the shimmer hue of the foil sort of paper. And I, anytime you get Mod Podge or glue on it, it just looks mucked up. You'll see after I'm done decoupaging these, I actually go back in with a paper towel and wipe up the Mod Podge right away. So I'm just gathering some materials to decoupage onto. And I think you'll see that it does make a big difference here. So one of the only differences that I notice when comparing decoupaging regular store-bought napkins, um, when you compare it to the napkins that you'll print at home, I noticed that the napkins you print at home, at least then with regard to the napkins that I bought and the ink that I'm using to print, they do seem a little bit more likely to bleed. So you do have to be careful. When I started with the Mod Podge, you'll see I had a large Mod Podge brush. And you'll see later I switched to this little sponge. So instead of kind of painting over it with long strokes, you can kind of pat it up and down. The Mod Podge, I was still able to apply it completely thoroughly that way, but I felt like there was definitely a lot less bleeding of the ink. After I finished Mod Podging the words to the cardstock, I went around the napkin edges with some gold gilding wax. I love the gold theme. You'll see that a lot, obviously, as I'm working on the cover of this journal. But not only did I use it for color and to emphasize the focal point, but I think it just really helps blend the edges of the napkin into the background. You can do this with watercolor. You could do kind of go around it with stickles or liquid pearls. Any kind of like pasty substance would be good. Um, I just think I don't like that line that you see, especially if you're not, when I buy napkins, I oftentimes pry them apart. There's several ply. And so it kind of makes it thinner and you don't get that distinct line. These napkins I bought after I printed them, they weren't separating really well. So I didn't try and pry them apart any further. So they're thicker. And so I really just like going around the borders of it to kind of blend it into the background. And then that way there's not that like, oh, look at me. It looks like a third grader glued me down. You know what I'm trying to say. So now I'm getting going on the front cover, and I decided that I wanted to decoupage the napkin onto a book page. And at first, I was a little worried that the background may be too busy, but I am really happy with how this came out. And I do think that the cream and the white look really nice and complement each other together, especially up against the gold. But again, same thing, you don't want to just decoupage this directly onto this type of paper. So find yourself a nice background. Again, usually lighter backgrounds I think work better, especially if you have a lot of detail in the printing of the napkin itself. You don't want it all to just kind of blend together. You want it to pop, right? Because it's the focal point on the cover. I have to say, at this point in time, I was thinking this journal looked a little bit weird. There's a lot going on between the gold, which is kind of overpowering at first, the flowers on the spine, this tassel that I wasn't really sure I liked all that much, but I had it laying around, and to be honest, I wanted to kind of cover. I left a little too much room between the spine and the front cover, and so some of that, like the Tyvek tape I used, was peering out, and I needed something kind of thick and bushy to cover it up. And at this point in time, I'm just like, oh, what am I doing here? Like, this is too much going on. I don't know where this is going, but I'm telling you, it does come together at the end, and sometimes those are the best kinds of projects. So you'll see here and in the other decoupage projects I do, I oftentimes like to decoupage a picture as a kind of the main focal point and then put some words on it. And so I cut the words off this napkin separately and just decided to kind of decoupage them straight on. I felt like they still showed up just fine overlying the napkin there. And I don't know, I thought it made it look really balanced. Just like before, I go ahead and come in with my paper towel, spritz with some water, and just clean up the Mod Podge. Obviously, it's really easy to do on this gold paper because it's kind of slippery. You might not be able to do that with other papers. Just know what kind of surface you're working with. It looked really nice after I cleaned it up. And just like before, I am taking some of that Art Alchemy gilding wax in gold. I think the name of the color is vintage gold, and oh my gosh, it smells so good. It smells like an orange. I don't know if you guys have ever smelled gilding wax like this before, but anyways, it smells really good. I would not recommend huffing it, but it does smell really good. Um, so I just went ahead and went around the napkin and the book page like I did before to try and kind of tie everything together and blend everything together in the background. I also think it kind of gives it a really nice weathered, vintagey look. The other thing that I really like to do is when I decoupage things, I want to look weathered. After I put down the initial layer of Mod Podge and then the napkin down, I kind of ruffle it a little bit to purposefully create some wrinkles. And then after I decoupage over top of it, and that, after I Mod Podge over the top of the napkin after it goes down, I will take an ink pad and lightly go over the wrinkles to really accentuate them. So now I feel like things are finally coming together, but I wasn't thrilled. I felt like the cover still needed some oomph, and I thought that I could do that by adding some more color to it. I took this floral pink applique and decided to add a pink butterfly as well, and I think it works with the theme the botanical kind of naturey theme of it all, and it really provides some stark contrast, some needed contrast, in my opinion, against the white, black, and gold. And so I felt like once I did that, it finally started coming together and kind of tied everything together really nicely. I decided to keep that flower, the one that I put the brad through. I decided to keep it white, just because I didn't want to add any more colors to the mix. But there are some really cool ways you could decorate those fake flowers. Sometimes I will dab them directly in my ink pad. You can add gold gilding wax to them, like the gilding wax I'm using around the napkin itself. You can just kind of like dab that on. You could decorate these or the center or the petals themselves with stickles or liquid pearls. So use your imagination. But yeah, I love decorating these fake flowers. It's one of my favorite things to do. I think sometime soon I want to make a cover just out of either decorated paper flowers or decorated like artificial flowers, and just have the entire journal cover be covered in flowers front and back. I think that would be so cool. So I set some eyelets, gave the journal a little closure, and I think this one is done. At least the cover is done. I don't think I ever have decoupaged a cover before, and I love how this came out. I absolutely love, love, love this. So as you just saw, some of the napkins I printed were just one single large design. Some of the other napkins I actually printed collage sheets onto them, and used a digital printable. So I basically have a napkin of several different images. I wasn't sure how that would go because I was worried that maybe cutting through the napkin would be hard, and I don't want to really rip apart individual images because obviously you'll just be tearing all over the place. But I have to say, just with standard scissors, these napkins were really easy to cut through. So don't let that stop you. If you would like to print several different images onto a napkin, you should be able to cut them out just fine. The images I'm using for this decoupage project are this pretty bird that you see. I thought it looked perfect up against that fall paper to the left and that other really pretty bird that I sewed around. So I decided to keep the bird theme rolling, and I am going to decoupage this image of birds onto this red cardstock here, and I am going to make a pocket out of it. I'm going to show you in a second how I decided to accentuate that image and went ahead and not only accentuate it, but blend it back in the background, blend the napkin with the cardstock together. Spoiler alert, instead of using the gold gilding wax, I used tissue paper. And speaking of decoupage, I have also decoupaged tissue paper really frequently, and actually it decoupages really, really nice. Even the colored tissue paper, it doesn't seem to bleed at all with the Mod Podge. And if you're wondering, I have also printed on tissue paper using basically the same technique as I used to print on these napkins. And it has worked out great. And in some cases, I felt like the detail was actually better on the tissue paper. I think probably because it's thinner. And I noticed that I actually had less trouble with my printer jamming with the tissue paper than napkins. So um, just in case you're in love with your napkins and have never tried to print and decoupage with anything else, you may want to give the tissue paper a try. I'm just really feeling the gold today. If you guys can't tell, I have this gold tissue paper left over from last Christmas, I think it was, and I absolutely love it. It is beautiful, and I am going to go ahead around and decoupage this on. I'm basically just using it to frame the birds. Again, it just helps kind of blend the napkin into the background, and I just am a huge fan of framing focal points. So that's exactly what I'm going to do here, and there's not going to be any fancy gluing to do or fancy measuring. I'm just going to rip the pieces off and take my Mod Podge and just dab it right on there. And as you figured out by now, I am all about putting the words and images together. I just think they complement each other really nicely. So on one of my printed napkins, I have this little section of brown that I think is supposed to be a label. So I cut that out, and you'll see me fumbling through the other napkins. I was trying to find some words that I felt like would fit well with the picture. Nothing was really speaking to me, so I actually ended up just cutting out the name, the graphics up at the top, the name of the digital image kit. And it's like Misty Morning, I think. Miss something morning. We'll see in just a second. Sorry to leave you guys hanging. I could not, for the life of me, remember what the name was, and I'm doing this voiceover a day later, so it's not fresh in my mind. Anyways, in the meantime, you get to see me kind of flip through some of the other napkins I printed. I found these like digital images of dictionary pages with pictures superimposed. And oh my gosh, these are going to become one of my favorite things to decoupage with. I love these. I'm going to have to print like a million more copies. You, of course, don't need to print digital images. There is a whole host of free resources out there, free images, archived dictionary pages. You don't have to go out and purchase anything. If you are wondering if you do see something that you like here, all of these printables, I believe, were obtained from the Graphics Fairy website. It's an archive collection of a ton of different printables and images. They make it real easy for you. Everything's already sized down and in the in a printable format. So I pay I think $9 a month for that service. Obviously, you don't have to do that. There's a whole wealth of free images online, but they do make it really easy for you, and they do have some beautiful, beautiful, beautiful collections of images, themed bundles that they've curated, and they offer a ton of project ideas and tutorials. So I recommend giving them a look. As you guys know by now, I can never leave well enough alone, and that was way too much white space for my comfort. You know how I like things busy, busy, busy. So I went ahead and just am decoupaging some book pages to fill up that white space, and I am really pleased with how this comes out. We'll add a few final touches at the end to kind of tie everything together. And then I will probably off camera, I'll go ahead and put something designed. I was thinking a postcard would look really nice, something bird or nature themed. So I'll make a postcard to stick in that pocket, and then we will be ready for another layout. And oh, and looking at this, it looks like the words I chose, it's the name of the collection of images is Misty Forest Morning, and I thought that fit perfectly. By the way, the journal I am working on is a Halloween/fall theme journal. I know this video is going to be coming out after Halloween. I've kind of started gearing the layouts in this journal more towards fall because I have several Halloween journals already. And so I'm really focusing on more autumn kind of harvest theme layouts. If you would like a peek at my collection of Halloween and fall journals that I have been working on to try and finish, I will include the link to that above and in the description box. So at this point, I'm really loving how this is all coming together. I find decoupage so freeing because you're really not restricted with what you can do with it. You can superimpose it. Now, it might not be the best way, but you can superimpose it on any kind of background. Obviously, like I said earlier, I think lighter colors work better than darker colors when you're trying to, make sure they have the most visibility. But you can superimpose them on any background. You could decoupage a whole page. Or you could just decoupage down a small section like I did on this page. You can decoupage small little images or words. One of my favorite ways to decorate an envelope is to actually just decoupage the entire outside of the envelope. And I think I've done that with tissue and napkins, or tissue paper and napkins. And I once the Mod Podge dries, like the texture is so nice. Put yourself an eyelet and make a little closure, and you have yourself a gorgeous envelope. That is one of my favorite things to decoupage. Aside from that, I love playing cards. You'll see soon. I decoupage a couple of labels slash, I guess maybe you could call them tea cards. I don't know if they'd be tea cards really. I think they're more like labels, but you can do the same thing with playing cards. They look really neat, and you can clean up the edges really easily when you're working with a thicker paper like that, just by going around the paper with a sanding block. So that's a super easy way to clean up the edges of the cards instead of painstakingly cutting around the napkin after you've done decoupaging it or gluing it down. So just some ideas for other decoupage projects you can do. They're all fun, and it's so just kind of, it really works. You can utilize this with any project. And so that's why I mass printed all these napkins. I have all these project ideas and all these things that I want to do with them now. So recently, I've been on this huge label kick. I love making labels, and all you do is cut down some cardstock. You can either keep the edges square, or you can take a page chomper, a corner chomper, and reshape the corners, and then just start layering things on top of each other. There are some formulas out there. There really are no rules. I think in general, collaging something in the background, doing a little bit of stamping on top, adding either some words or some letters, and you have yourself a glorious label. This is a great scrap busting project as well. And I decided to start creating some labels by using these decoupage napkins as the base, the background. And truth be told, some of these labels, they truly become the focal point, but nevertheless, you see what I'm going for. I do find that for ease of cutting small images, if you can find yourself some thicker napkins, they do work better. They are easier to cut. In my previous video, I compared two napkins. One was a Vanity Fair napkin, the like super absorbent napkin. That's the napkin you see me cutting here. The other napkin was, they're actually quote unquote like disposable hand towels. Those seem to be sturdier, and in general, I found them easier to cut. It really doesn't matter if you're working with a very large single image and decoupaging the entire napkin onto a background. If you're trying to work and do small little projects like this and you're having to do a lot of cutting, I would recommend the sturdier napkin. They're easier to cut for sure. And don't be shy, grab your scraps, grab your collage sheets. Here I'm decoupaging the napkin, but just decoupaging that little slide image you see there isn't going to be enough to fill up the label. It would be really boring. So here I have book pages and some cardstock. I am gluing down, I'm cutting out some collage papers. It doesn't have to make sense. I think just adding different components are really good. You don't want to add a whole bunch of words. You don't want to add, in general, more than one picture of something, or else it becomes too distracting. Just, you know what I'm saying. So find some different components that give nice contrast. Glue them down, and then from there we can do some stamping, some inking, and distress them and really bring them to life. And here I'm just adding some pre-stamped ephemera. As you guys know, I am a huge fan of stamped images and words, and I like to just take a day where I just mass stamp. I take paper scraps I have, distress them a little bit, or take plain white edges that I have left over, scraps from other projects, and I just go to town stamping with different images, different words, using different colored paper, different colored inks. And I find I'm so much more likely to use those in projects if I don't have to keep dragging out my stamps and all my inks over and over and over again. So if you haven't tried this hack, I promise you it'll change your life and your crafting. So for this second label, I am decoupaging an image of a deer, and the image itself is really precious. I have to say I'm really disappointed with how this label turned out. I think it is because I made the poor choice of decoupaging the image, the brown and green image, onto a dark green piece of paper, and off camera it doesn't look quite as dark and as bad. You can see it a little bit better than you can on camera now that I see this and I'm playing it back, but it was still really disappointing. So again, I would recommend when you're decoupaging things, I would probably try and decoupage over a lighter background and something that the image isn't going to totally blend into. Duh, if only I would have thought about that ahead of time. That's okay. We live and learn, right? And the only way to get better at decoupage is to try some different projects and to see what works and what doesn't. May I also suggest if you want to ink your cards, I would probably ink around them before you decoupage or after the Mod Podge dries. I was really struggling here because my ink jobber kept getting wet with Mod Podge and it wasn't going on nicely because the card itself was wet, but I had to just get it done for purposes of finishing the video. But small little things like this make a huge difference. So for our third and final label, I am sticking with the bird theme. I am using one of my dictionary pages that I printed on one of those sturdier hand towels I was talking to you guys about earlier. Got them on Amazon. I think I got 50 of them for like $11. So there is a price difference when you're comparing them to your standard napkins, but I'm telling you, they work really well. I think the detail prints much more clearly on them when comparing them to like the Bounty or the Vanity Fair napkins that I bought. I find that when you're Mod Podging over, you don't have to be as careful. They don't seem to bleed as much. Um, if you go to the video I linked in the beginning of the video, or you look in the description box where I show you exactly how I printed on these, I include the links to the napkins, the exact napkins that I bought on Amazon. If you are looking for that, you specifically want to try these napkins I'm telling you about. They are the hand towel ones. In reality, any napkin that I experimented with, that I tried, I was able to print on and decoupage with, which is really the only thing that matters when you're doing this project. So there are some semantics around it and some nuances with regard to the different napkin types, but if you have some napkins, you can print on them and you can decoupage with them. And even better, you don't need to spend $2 a napkin like I used to do when I used to just buy them online. Here, I'm just adding some stickles around the bird to emphasize it as a focal point, and just because apparently I can't make anything today without at least putting a little bit of gold in it. I really enjoyed making these. I don't know if you'd classify them more as labels or tea cards, but either way, I'm thrilled with how they came out. And now I'm on another label kick, and I think we need to spend a dedicated video talking about all the different ways you can make labels. Obviously, aside from just decoupaging things on top of them, though that is a pretty cute option. So guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me today. I hope this video inspired you to not only print your own napkins at home, but to dig into that stash I know you have and to start decoupaging with them. The projects are endless. These things are so versatile and they really elevate any project. So guys, if you enjoyed this and want to see more of Ink and Papyrus, please hit that like and subscribe button, and I can't wait to see you the next time.